Welcome to the first video by Inception, where we make you understand the concept of perfect competition and invisible hand. So let's see what the invisible hand is all about. In a perfect competition, neither the buyer nor the seller can influence the price. So why can't either of these guys influence the price? First of all, you as the buyer are too small to negotiate with the seller, and the seller on the other hand cannot influence the price because he does not have adequate resources. That is to say that he may not have enough money for advertising, he may not have the skill sets to go about negotiating with you, so therefore he is not able to influence the price from his side. Price of a product is determined by its supply and demand forces. We will understand this in the next slide. This process is called as price mechanism. Adam Smith refers to this as the invisible hand, and the invisible hand is always at work. What this means is that we are unaware of this happening, that is, consciously we are not aware of this happening, but this is happening throughout the day, and we have come under situations where the invisible hand has played a role and we haven't been conscious about the invisible hand playing its role in front of us. Even if there are any imbalances, it guides the producer and the consumer towards equilibrium and brings a natural order through demand and supply. Again, we'll understand this in the next slide. So imagine you are at a vegetable market. You, the buyer, is represented in that red bubble and the seller is represented in the blue bubble. Now you want to buy 1 kilogram of vegetables. The seller wants to sell you 1 kilogram of vegetables. But you are ready to pay a price of 14. But the seller says, no way am I going down below the price of 20. Then you decide to increase the price from your side and you say, rupees 15 is my final offer. And the seller says, no way, rupees 18 is my final offer. So you come to a higher price from your side, that is rupees 17, and the seller says, fine, let's make that deal. Now here you can see the demand and supply forces working together and how any imbalances are able to be resorted and a point of equilibrium is attained between the buyer and the seller. 17 is a price at which you are comfortable with for buying 1 kg of vegetables. 17 is the price at which the seller is comfortable with in selling you 1 kilogram of vegetables. To again explain how price mechanism works, we have considered another example here, that is the price of sugar, the quantity demanded for that sugar and the quantity of sugar in supply. Now remember, there is an inverse relationship between demand and supply. It says in the law of demand that when the price is low, the consumer wants to buy more, and when the price is high, the consumer wants to buy less. But the law of supply says when the price is more, more is supplied. When the price is less, less is supplied. So let's compare the first column and the second column. You notice the law of demand working. The first column and the third column, you notice the law of supply working. So in the first column, you're able to see when the price of sugar is at the lowest, that is rupees 10, the quantity demanded is at the highest. When the price of sugar is at its highest, that is rupees 50, the quantity demanded is at the lowest, which is 20. Now let's see the law of supply working. When the price of sugar is rupees 10, quantity demanded of sugar, quantity supplied for sugar is 20. When the price of sugar is at the highest, that is rupees 50, the quantity of sugar supplied is at the highest, which is rupees 100. This is what we refer to as that inverse relationship. But there is one point where the price of sugar is rupees 30 and the quantity demanded is 60 and the quantity supplied is 60. Now remember, the producer and the consumer do not know that there is a point of equilibrium called as 30. So using a mechanism of trial and error, they try to find what is that price wherein I am also comfortable selling as a supplier and I am also comfortable buying as a consumer. Now let's understand the price mechanism using Ola Taxi as an example here. Now assuming that Ola sends you a message charging rupees 30 for 5 kilometers, you immediately pull out your phone and decide to book a taxi. Now here Ola sees that there are 30 consumers but only 15 cars can be supplied. Here there is an excess demand. Now why do I say there is an excess demand? Because for everyone, 30 rupees isn't a big amount of money to pay for a distance of 5 kilometers. So we all find taxi services very convenient. So we pull out our phone and we use the Ola app and we decide to book a taxi. Here, even though there are 30 of us who are booking a taxi, Ola is able to supply only 15 cars. Hence the case of excess demand. Here, demand is P1Q2, but supply is P1Q1. What it means is the price here is quite low, hence P1. The quantity that the consumers want is Q2, that is at the point L, and K, you're able to see the excess demand line represented in those dotted lines. So here there is excess demand, but the supply P1, the quantity which they're able to supply is Q1. That is, the consumer is wanting 30 cars, but the supplier is not able to supply those 30 cars and can give only 15 cars. So the supplier does something here. He notices the excess demand and charges rupees 50 for 5 kilometers. He is assuming that if I were to hike the price, the number of people who can avail my taxi service is going to reduce. Now I know you might be thinking that why would he want to do it? Why can't he make his taxi service available to everyone? But trying to make your product or service available to everyone isn't so feasible. It can result in additional cost. So, to discourage people from taking up the taxi service, it decides to charge rupees 50 for 5 kilometers. Now, the number of people who are interested to book that Ola taxi is reduced. So, there is going to be 15 cars and 15 consumers. But Ola doesn't realize that this is the sweet spot. The amount of the amount of taxis available are 15 and the amount of consumers here are also 15. So hence demand is PQ and supply is also going to be PQ. E here is that point of equilibrium. But like I said, the consumers and the producers are unaware of this equilibrium point. So the supplier decides to take advantage. Seeing that the demand is strong, they hike it further to rupees 75 for 5 kilometers and decide to take advantage by supplying more cars, assuming there are 15 consumers who are still willing to pay for their services. Now Ola is under the impression, hey, let's try to take advantage of this situation. Let's try to see if the consumers are still ready to pay rupees 75 for 5 kilometers. The supplier is under the impression that if you are able to pay from 30 to 50, you're also able to pay from 50 to 75. So hence the law of supply. The supplier wants to take advantage from the consumer by supplying more at a higher price. So here what's going to happen? But here supply is more than demand. The 15 consumers will take 15 cars, but 5 cars go unutilized. That is, the supplier decides to slightly increase the number of cars supplied to 20 cars, but consumers still want to take up only 15 cars. Here there is excess supply. So rather than having 5 cars go unutilized, the supplier decides to further reduce the number of cars that is being supplied and brings it down to that sweet spot that we mentioned before, where demand is PQ and supply is PQ. Remember, in the third situation, when the price goes up to P2, the consumers want only Q1, but the supplier is able to give Q2. That is, in the third situation, there are 20 cars, but the number of consumers is only 15. Hence, the invisible hand is seen at work here. This is something that happens throughout the day and throughout our lives, but this is not something that we are consciously aware of. So I hope this video helped you understand how the invisible hand works. If you have any queries, do let me know. Thank you.